Welcome to my YouTube channel. So in this video, I'm going to be taking you guys through Python decorators. Python decorators are core concepts that are used extensively in Python. For example, in frameworks and libraries such as Django, FastAPI, just to mention a few. And as such, it is important that you as a Python developer understand how decorators work so that you can effectively implement decorators of your own and decorators that are provided to you by the various Python libraries framework. So what is a Python decorator? Now, a Python decorator is a function that takes another function as an argument. So basically, first-class functions extends the functionality of this function that it takes as an argument before, so it can either extend or alter the functionality of this function that it takes as an argument before returning it back to the user. I hope that is clear. Now, to implement a decorator, there is a specific syntax that you need to follow. Now, the syntax is as follows. So we have the first syntax where we have the @ symbol followed by the decorator name, the @ symbol followed by the decorator name and parentheses, and @ symbol followed by the decorator name, the arguments and keyword arguments. So basically positional arguments and keyword arguments that are specific to the decorator. Okay, so if you have a decorator that takes arguments, use the @ symbol followed by the decorator name plus the positional and keyword arguments. Now, just like there are two distinct syntax, there are two distinct structures when it comes to implementing decorators. Okay, one for decorators that do take arguments and the other for decorators that do not take arguments. So let's start with the decorators that do not take arguments. So if you have a decorator that does not take an argument, okay, what is the structure of that decorator? So the first function that you define is going to hold the name of the decorator. And now this first function is going to take the function that you plan to extend as an argument, okay? And then inside of it, you're going to define another function. Now this function, in this case, we're calling it the wrapper function, is going to take the arguments, positional arguments or keyword arguments, whichever, that are specific to the function that you plan to extend. I hope that is clear. And then inside this wrapper function, inside this second function that we have nested inside the function that holds the name of the decorator, is where we are going to extend the functionality or alter the functionality of our function. Okay, this is where the function that we plan to extend is going to be invoked, and then after the new functionality has been added, then we are going to return that function back to the user. I hope that is clear. But then if you're going to implement a decorator that does take arguments, the structure is a little bit different. The first thing you're going to define is a factory function. Now that factory function is going to hold the name of the decorator. And then that factory function is going to take the arguments that are specific to the decorator. And then inside that factory function, you're going to define two other functions. One nested inside the other. Now the first function that is going to be nested inside the decorator function is, in this case we're calling wrapper function, is now going to take the function that you plan to extend as an argument, and then inside that function we're going to define another function that is going to take keyword arguments and positional arguments that are specific to the function that you plan to extend. It is in this second nested function, in this case in a wrapper, where we're going to define new functionality or alter the functionality of our function before returning it back to the user. I hope that is clear. Now, to implement this, to really see these concepts in play, we are going to take a project-oriented approach. Now, this project is basically a scenario where we're going to assume that you are a Python developer that does a lot of web scraping for your clientele, okay? And all your clients require that the script data is saved in a .json file before it's sent back to them. Okay, another thing, because you're a developer who looks to improve, you always include a functionality to calculate the total time it takes to scrape all your websites. Okay, so in that case you have two functionalities. One, to calculate the total time it takes to scrape your websites, and the second functionality is the functionality that takes the scrape data, writes it in a .json file before returning it back to you, where now you can be able to send it back to your users. Now we want to be able to take these two functionalities and store them in a decorator, so that irrespective of what function we write, we can always access these two functionalities. That means we don't have to rewrite the same functionality over and over again. So without further ado, let's get started. So let me get you up to speed on what we have here. So remember earlier on we had talked about the scenario where you are a Python developer that does a lot of web scraping. This is one of the functions that you have authored that specifically scrapes the books to scrape.com website. stores the information of every book in a dictionary and then appends each book information in a book list variable, this, and then eventually returns that to the user. Okay, so each dictionary is basically the title, contains the title of the book, the price of the book, and then the availability of the book, whether it is in stock or it's not in stock. Okay, so I'm not really going to go into the details of what this function does, because then I'll be deviating away from the purpose of this video, which is to look at how we can effectively implement decorators. That said, let me run this function to see what we're getting. So I'll open the terminal. I have the decos virtual environment activated, and the decos virtual environment have installed Selenium and Beautiful Soup, of course, for web scraping. But then when I run the scrape to scrape function, we're going to get sort of like a progress bar indicating the number of pages we have scraped so far. We have a total of 50 pages. Okay, so a page is going to be 1% of 50. That is it. So let me just run the code and let's see what we're getting. So I'll say Python 3 and then main.py. Bam. For this so that we can get to decorators. Okay. So basically our function has scraped all the 50 pages available in the books to scrape.com website and has retrieved all the books, getting their title, price, and stock availability, storing that in the book list, and then returning. But of course, we're not storing the return value of the script to script function in a variable, but that is basically it. Now, let's get to implementing the decorators. So the first thing we're going to do, we are going to create a new file. I'll call it utils.py, utils.py. Basically, this is where our decorator is going to reside. Now, inside the utils.py, I'm going to define a function. I will call it execution time. Why not? Execution time. Okay. In our discussion, we say that the first function we define is going to hold the name of the decorator. So our decorator moving forward is going to be called execution time. Okay, and the execution time in this case is going to take one parameter, and that is the function we plan to extend its functionality. So basically in this case we plan to extend the functionality of the script to script, and so that is what we're going to pass here. So I'll just pass it as a function. Okay, and then just so that we can be a little bit meticulous, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to say from typing. Okay, I'm going to import callable, and then we're going to say that this func argument is a callable, that is a function, and then inside here we're going to define another function, call it the wrapper function, right? And inside the wrapper function is where we're going to pass the arguments and keyword arguments that are specific to the function that we plan to extend. So in this case, because overhead we don't know what arguments our function is going to have. So the best way to do this is to pass the arguments and keyword arguments using the double asterisk. Okay, so keyword arguments. Okay, and in here is now where we're going to extend the functionality of our toScrape function. Now the first functionality we're going to add to the toScrape function is the functionality to calculate the total time it takes to scrape all the pages. So to do that, we're going to import time. I'll say import time. Okay, and then we're going to define a new variable, call it start time. Now this is going to hold the time when our function is executed. Okay, so I'll say time dot perform counter, and then after that I'm going to run our function. I would say results is whatever function you're going to pass. So func in this case is going to represent the toScript function. Okay, the toScript function, the function that we plan to extend its functionality. And then after doing that, we're going to say func and then pass all the arguments that are specific to the func. But of course our function that takes no argument, but it's a safe approach to pass arguments and keyword arguments just in case you have other functions that do take arguments and keyword arguments. So in that case, keywords, and then after that I'm going to calculate the end time. So I'll say end time is equals to time dot perform counter and then subtract the start time. Okay, and then you're going to print to the user that the function, so I will use f strings, and I'll say the function in this case, we don't know the name of the function, so we'll say function dot name took, in this case, end time, and then we can have it in how many decimal places, maybe 4 decimal places, right? Sorry, for F, it took seconds to run. Okay, and then after that, we're going to return the results back to the user. Okay, return the wrapper function. And that's it. We've basically extended the functionality of our toScript function, okay, to include the functionality that is going to calculate the total time it takes to scrape all the pages available. Now, let's actually use this execution time decorator. Remember, we said that the syntax for this is at and then the name of the what? The decorator. But before we can use it, we have to import it. So I'll say from utils, I will import execution time, and then I will say at symbol execution time. And like that, we have implemented, we have extended the functionality of the scrape to scrape function to include the functionality to calculate the total time it takes to scrape all the 50 pages of the books.toscrape.com website. I hope that is clear. So let's run that and see what we get. So I'll say Python 3 main.py. I will forward this and then get back to you when you get the results. Okay, nice. After running the script to script function, after we have decorated it with the execution time, with the execution time decorator, you see that apart from scraping all the 50 pages, we are getting new information on the terminal that tells us how many seconds it has taken for the scrape to scrape function to basically scrape all the 50 pages. Okay, so this is one way we can do it. Now let's move on to the second implementation, and that is the implementation of the functionality that takes the script information and writes it in a .json file. Okay, so to do that, we're going now to implement our execution time decorator differently. We are going to now implement a decorator that does take an argument. Okay, so to do that, I'm just going to comment out this. As we had discussed earlier on, we said that for decorators that do take arguments, we need to define 3 functions. Now, the first function, of course, is going to hold the name of our decorator, in this case, execution time. So let's keep the same name, okay? But it's going to take a path, okay? Path, which in this case is a string, okay? It's a string, and this path is where the files are going to be saved, okay? After that, we're going to define the second function. The second function now is the wrapper function, and this one takes the function that we plan to extend as an argument, right? And then I'm just going to copy the rest of this code. I'll just copy that, and then inside here, I'm going to define now the inner function, right? And then this inner function is going to take the arguments that are specific to the function that we plan to do what? To extend. So I'll say keyword arguments like that, and then I'll just paste this code in here. I'll just uncomment everything, bam, and then tab, and we're good to go. Now let's add this new functionality where the script data is going to be saved in a .json file. Now what I will do, I will just remove the return result first, and then I will say that with open, okay, path, remember, so with open path, remember path, right, as we can say as file. So it's a path, basically it's a .json file, we know that. We can say as write, because we're going to write to it. We're going to say because we're going to use JSON, I'm also going to import JSON. Import JSON. Damn, import JSON, if I can type, and then we will say JSON dot dump. Okay, what are we dumping? The results. Remember, the results is a list of dictionaries, and then what are we are dumping these results, this list of dictionary, inside the what? The file. I hope that is clear. That is if you've worked with context managers, in this case the context manager with specific to reading and writing data to files. That's what we're going to do, and then eventually we are still going to return the result, just to make sure this list of dictionary is still available to the user after extending the functionality of their function. Now after that, we're going to return the inner function, okay, and then return the wrapper function. And there we have it. Also remember to include this as callable because we already imported it, so we might as well use it. Now going back to the main.py, let's try to run this and see if still our decorator works. So just clear that and run it. We're getting an error. This is important. Anytime that you're working with Python decorators that do take arguments, you always have to call them, you also have to include the parentheses. Let's say for instance that if you don't provide a path, it's given to you already, right? So I can just say file.json. Let's say it's already given to you, right? So if it's already given to you, then this error is not going to be thrown, right? Let's give that a shot and see. I'm just going to remove the parentheses and run that again. We're still getting an error as much as we have passed the positional argument. To fix that, you have to add the parentheses, and once you add the parentheses, you're good to go. So let's run that again and see what we're getting. It's supposed to run. Oh yeah, there we have it. Amazing. So our script-to-script website has taken 81 seconds to run, but notice this, we have the files.json. And in here we have all the books that we've scripted, and this is now ready to be sent to the client. Sometimes you may want to write the data that we script to a .json file, and sometimes we might not want to write it in a .json file. Let's give ourselves that freedom to decide, because sometimes we may just want to script that information and use it elsewhere instead of writing it to a .json file. So to do that, we are also going to include another positional argument, and this positional argument is going to be a boolean, that is write to JSON. So we're going to say write to JSON like that, and then I'm going to set that to, because it's a boolean, I'll set that to bool, and then yeah, comma. So this is also required. This is a positional argument that you have to pass whether you want the information script from the website written to a .json file or not. If you don't want that, then what will happen is the file will not actually write. This code block will not be executed. Okay, so to do that, we'll say if write to JSON is true, then only then what do we want to do? We want to write all the information script from the website to a .json file. I hope that is clear. So with that, we can now go back to our main.py file, and if we run this, we're going to get an error. Okay, so we need to pass the positional argument write to JSON. So in this case now I can come here and say write to JSON is true. Okay, if I do that, it means that I want, after script to script has extracted all the book information from the to script website, I want to copy it to the file.json. So that is already what we have done. If I set this to false, then as much as it's going to run and scrap all the pages, the information is not going to be written to a .json file. So to prove that, I'm going to delete the file.json and run our code again. But this time around, because we have passed the positional argument, we're not going to get an error. So let's run that. Alright, so our script to script function has completed, and as much as we are able to get the total execution time of the function, in this case script to script function, we have not written the information script in a .json file. That goes to show that the arguments that you're going to pass in the decorator syntax are specific to controlling how your decorator extends your function. So basically in this case, we're telling our decorator execution time to extend our function in all the ways except writing the script information in a .json file. I hope that you have learned something today. If you have any questions, you can leave them down in the comment section. If you like the video, consider subscribing, share it with your friends, and I will see you in the next.